Welcome, book lovers, back to our book review show. I am Marisa Serafini, of course, joined along with Phil Svitek once again. And this month, for the month of March 2024, we're doing There You'll Find Me by Jenny B. Jones, a young adult fiction about a young woman who goes over to Ireland and finds herself and finds her meaning. And, it's a feel good. We're going to talk all about it. First of all, we know that there's a movie based off of this called Finding You. It's also available. Go watch it. And then also, it's adapted from this book. And I actually watched the movie first years ago, liked the movie, and I was like, oh, there's a book on it, and it being March, I figured St. Patrick's Day, Irish, Ireland, and that was my whole genesis of why I chose this book. So, Phil, what were your quick thoughts?
Yeah, I, like you, had seen Finding You, and it left an impression on me. I thought it was a really well done movie. Uh, and yeah, I think the two work in tandem in many ways. In the movie, you get all of the visuals, and they're pretty aesthetic, right? Which you can try to describe with words, but is not the same. And in the book, you get much more of her internal dialogue, which obviously, an actor can portray so many different things, but still at the end of the day, you're interpreting one's actions on screen. And so in the book, we have a much more direct connection to the main character, Finley. So I thought they worked quite well together. And what I appreciated, the movie kept most of it certainly had the core of what the story was and the heart and things like that. It didn't change too much. So I think they're both really well done as standalones, that complement each other. So that was the fun part.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed the book and I enjoyed the movie for what they were. As we always know that the movies is going to admit a lot of things or change some aspects. We'll definitely get into it, but the things that they did quote unquote change didn't really take away the heart or any major things from the book that felt maybe made us felt like we were lacking something or changed the overall plot at the end. So their creative choices were still pretty solid and still got the message across from there. So the little bit about the book, it's Finley Sinclair, a senior in high school. She's on a mission to rediscover God in her year studying abroad in Ireland. And there she's coping with the guilt of and the grief of losing her brother and trying to get herself mentally and physically ready for this important upcoming audition that she has for this music conservatory school that she's planning on attending. But you know how sometimes like people just kind of have to go on like a self-discovery journey. It's one of those type of stories. She has to change her location, and maybe see the world a little bit different and open her eyes in that way. So, I'd like to actually start off asking you, because it is a YA book. It's fairly easy to read in that sense. It's not as heady as the other books that we have read. Um, are you a big fan of YA and like simple kind of stories like this? Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily call them simple. I think um, they're, the simplicity is in the plotting, but at the same time, it has a deep emotional resonance. And when it works, it can work really well. It is one of my more favorite genres. And I also understand like the writing aspect of it. That's what makes it fairly filmable, right? There's certain books that, within like two sentences, you span a whole, three eons of history. And it's like, how the hell do you convey that without just voiceover? Whereas this, you're kind of much more real time in the moment. And as you mentioned, of course, the movie omits some of the stuff, but all the same, you can kind of picture it as it's going along in that way. And yeah, I think I mean, it's trope for a reason, right? As we age, right? From like kids to then adolescence and then adolescence to adulthood, those are very formative times. And yeah, you don't know what the hell you're doing. And in particular, it's enough to, okay, for Finley to be worried about what her next steps are. But then she also lost her brother in an untimely way. And what does that mean for her, especially when he seemed to have life figured out, And so it's like, okay, what did he have that I didn't? And that becomes, her pathway to finding herself.
Right. And I think that's the thing that I really enjoy about YAs. It's a lot about self-discovery. That because, like you said, those are our formative years, teenager years going into young adulthood and entering our 20s. That's when we make major life decisions. Life changes in that way. And it makes sense that Finley's in a place in her life where she feels a little lost. A loss of a family member, a loss of her sense of self, like her purpose and direction in life. And sometimes you just have to make a major switch or do something, not to say drastic, but do something big enough that forces you to like look life at a different perspective or with new eyes in that way. So this trip for her was basically the thing that like helped her rediscover herself in a bit. And what I enjoyed about this book is that it's just like it's like 220 something pages, so it's not like the biggest book, but I loved how they packed a lot of important things. There are the main like three main story lines in this book, and even though it's a shorter book, it never felt convoluted. I clearly understood each like A, B, C storyline, and it didn't feel like rushed or confusing in that way. So like I applaud the writer that I could easily follow along. So I'd like to get into the first, probably the main storyline, where we have Finley going over to Ireland, doing a summer abroad, and being with the host family that used to host her brother when her brother studied abroad as well, and kind of following the same footsteps as her brother. Um, do you think this was like a smart choice on the character's part, trying to like see where someone else had been and maybe try to like uh get those moments, those aha epiphany moments that her brother might have had?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no different, the whole idea of like rediscovering, I mean, it's why we travel in general, right? And for her, uh, it's a big shift, right? And it's no different than when one does travel. Let's say, you were going to Colombia. I'm sure you'd ask me, hey, what should I do? What should I see? Because I've been there, right? So it's you want to take these personal recommendations, and of course, kind of explore on your own. And certainly Finley, is forced to do that in many ways. But yeah, I think, if you have at least some sort of semblance of, you want a starting position, right? And certainly that offers this. Now, this is beyond just a recommendation because she's literally trying to walk the spiritual path, quite literally, that her brother, did, and he found God, and that's what she's literally trying to find as well, is not only her purpose. I mean, purpose and God for her are essentially one and the same,
Right.
So yeah, I think if anything, the problem becomes when you over rely on that, and as she gets frustrated, certainly in the early stages, it's like, why aren't I seeing what my brother saw? And it's like, just open your eyes, girl. You know?
Right. And it's those things where you know, being someone who was raised Catholic, I definitely understand that mentality where they're like, if you're lost in life, just pray. and like the answers will come to you. God will come to you in the time of your the most need, you know, and stuff like that gets hit over the head a lot. And not just Catholicism, but just like Christianity in general. But like I understand that purpose when someone gets lost in their life and they're just trying to search for something. And she lost her faith. She lost her purpose of like the reasons why she's doing things, her motivation. And I think is basically how we get the title of this book. There you'll find me. She's searching for answers. And she's searching for God, she's searching for faith. And I get when people find whatever it is, some spiritual higher being or whatever it is in their life that they were lacking, that's when they can find their direction again, get back on the path where they know where they're going. So like that's like a big story thread throughout this is like her just searching for answers and finding her purpose and finding happiness again because she's struggling with her audition piece for this music school. And you can see like the ins and outs of like she feels motivated and inspired, and then she's like, well, what's it all for, you know, if it's not going to serve me. So I get the struggle when it comes to big things like that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the music goes, it's no different. Like art, right? At the end of the day, is trying to convey something, an emotion, a feeling, whatever it may be, a message. And with her, the song is for and about her brother. And in order to finish it, she has to essentially have the moment of clarity that he had, right? And until she has that herself, how the hell is she supposed to convey that in her song, right? And so that's her kind of struggle. And that's why all these sort of storylines, they're separate storylines, but they work in tandem rather than just being mindless complications of like, she's doing this, now she's doing this, and now she's having to deal with this. They're very much intertwined and moving along, one informs the other. So that's why I think it works really well, both in terms of the book and the movie, is that the pacing is really well thought out, for sure.
Yeah, agreed. And like you can see the ebbs and flows of her mentality and her thought train of when she starts believing, when she's doubting, like and then like how her logic is like, well, if I'm doing all this and I lose my faith and God left me, you know, he left me just like my brother left me. And so there's a lot of like, I don't want to say toxic thinking, but like distorted thinking. And I get it when like people struggle with grief, like we're not thinking clearly. And that was her problems. Like she was trying to understand and come to terms with why her brother left and why God left her at the same time. And the book definitely delves into just like the struggle that people find with their faith and spirituality. Very realistic, quite honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough
Um,
in general. And that's why I mean, one of my favorite storylines is with the old woman. And especially in the early part, she wants none of it because the whole idea is, hey, these people are gonna die, but essentially be with them until they die. And she's like, listen, no, 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 no. I still haven't gotten over the loss of someone else dying that I actually knew. I don't want to get attached to somebody knowing that they're gonna die. And
right,
that's certainly I actually have a lot of people that have that sort of mentality. And I understand where it comes from, right? Because the pain does hurt. And in many ways, I look at it like the pain of losing someone is validation of the love that existed, right? Um, but in that sense, I always tell people like, okay, so you're just going to be miserable, like you're going to take that time away of what could have been just because you know the outcome. Like we're all going to die eventually, we just
right.
don't think about it in those terms because it's abstracted for most of us in our day to day.
Absolutely. And I love how you brought us into basically B's storyline. It could be B or C, but yeah, one of her main assignments for school that she's studying, she has to take this taking senior program basically, and where all the students have to adopt a citizen or like a senior citizen and get to know them, get to know about their life, write a report on them. And she gets paired up with Kathleen Sweeney, and I actually I really enjoyed the storyline. Maybe it's because me, I always for some reason got along with older generations, but like, respect the elders, and it's like you learn so much about life from people who have been through life. And I really loved this pairing of the younger and older woman. And an older woman, this Kathleen Sweeney, she's been through life. She's bitter. She's angry. She's literally at the end of her life. And we had this young woman with Finley who's just trying to start off her life and trying to find the meaning of life. So you get these two like different perspectives forced to work with each other, and it became a relationship that I did not see, or like friendship that I wasn't expecting, but I was surprisingly pleased by it. So what were your thoughts of this senior program assignment for
Well,
Finley?
firstly, I think I wish we had more stuff like that here.
Right.
I think it's, we, I don't know. Anyway, I could go down a tangent about all that, but it's a great program. And I actually don't think, certainly in the beginning, that they're that dissimilar, right? I mean, in many ways, Kathleen could very much represent the bitterness of Finley if she continues down this path, you know? And it becomes kind of like, hey, if I save Kathleen, I save myself type of an ordeal. Yeah, because, sometimes even in our grief, even in our pain, it's much more easier to almost care about somebody else than it is ourselves. And that's when the sort of epiphany happens of, oh, they're one and the same. What I was giving to her, I actually need to give to myself. And I think that's part of the core of what Finley does undergo in that way. And, by giving Kathleen that sort of love and attention. And there's an honesty there too of like, the initial book that Finley reads, and Kathleen's like, bring a better book, damn it. This one
Yeah.
sucks. I like Stephen King. Bring Stephen King.
Yeah, everyone reads Pride and Prejudice. But yeah, and I think what Finley got out of that friendship was that it's kind of like she got a second chance at making amends with a relationship with a sibling, because she lost her brother and she didn't get the answers that she wanted. And now she has this opportunity to help a woman who still has a living sibling and make amends that way and try to find answers, because now we know Kathleen Sweeney, her storyline, it was posed that she stole the man of her sister, and then her sister became angry and estranged from her, saying that, you stole my man, how dare you. And then like, but and unfortunately the entire town only saw that front and went against Kathleen. But now knowing the deeper storyline, the reasons behind it, that she was actually saving her sister, Fiona Doyle, from a life of abuse and hardship. So Kathleen took upon the responsibility as like, no, let me take this man so you don't have to suffer. I'll suffer. But people didn't know that, and even her sister didn't know that. And so when Finley saw this opportunity, it's like, hey, you have a sibling who's here who wants to talk to you, who wants to see you, or like more so, you want to see her and you want to get answers, you want to actually explain yourself. Like if I had that opportunity with my brother, I would do it. You have this opportunity, so get over your pride and do it now. And that's what I really like, the motivation why Finley really wanted to help her. And I like they got to that point of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the great tragedies of life is just our misperceptions of what we think something is, you know,
Right.
and that can lead to feuds when literally, hey, if we just sat down for 5 minutes, maybe we could iron this out, you know.
Right.
So
And we say it all the time. People just talk to each other and got to know each other a little bit better and knew their intentions behind things. There's always more than one side to a story. And the fact that Finley was able to get these two sisters to finally reunite, get over themselves and talk to each other and work out their issues. Like, oh, a we could have had more time with each other. We could have had, get to that level of forgiveness of each other. And I think getting Kathleen to that point of and her sister getting to the point of forgiving each other helps Finley get to the point where she can forgive God for quote unquote abandoning her, you know?
Yeah.
So, but, and like those two, like you said, these storylines really parallel with each other very well. And I enjoy that. So moving on to the third, and surprisingly for a YA book, it took us this long to get to a romance. Um, during her whole trip in Ireland and trying to search for answers, of course, Finley meets Beckett Rush, who is a young Irish American famous actor in young adult films. In the book, the vampire movies. And this book came out in 2011. So what was big during 2011? Twilight. So that makes sense. But the movie actually changes and they made them dragon. He's like a dragon slayer. But
Because
either
Game of
way,
Thrones was hot.
yeah. Either way, he's a big deal. It's a big heartthrob actor. But when we see Beckett outside of his acting, career and stuff, and he's just being himself, he's actually a really good guy. So what were your thoughts about this budding relationship
Yeah, I mean, even though we're talking about it last, that's one of the first things that kind of sprouts up because they meet each other on the plane
on the plane?
and they end up, as she learns later, staying at the same bed and breakfast, let's call it. And yeah, it kind of spawns this relationship through them where they essentially, it becomes that you need me and I need you. So he's got a car, he can drive her to all the locations to find the spots that her brother had visited. So that's his end of the bargain. And, her end of the bargain is she's a good scene partner for him. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I mean, but she very much in that same way is judgmental of him, always assuming that she knows him exactly the type of person he is. And in many ways, he continues to surprise her along every step of the way. So that was the nice part about it. And when that happens, right, it's your worldview shatters. It's like, oh, I thought I knew everything. And if I didn't, what else don't I know? You know?
Right.
So,
And I think the thing that I enjoyed about Becca is like I think just us being in the industry and being surrounded by Hollywood celebrities, literally, um, it's like we're conditioned to think like, oh, they're an actor, they're probably this type of person, or like entitlement, what have you. They have a bunch of they have a posse that helps them, what have you. But then we would get Beckett by himself. He's like, no, he's actually just like a regular guy who his main storylines like he wants to just be a normal person. But unfortunately, his father and slash agent manager who's like controlling his career and fabricating a romantic relationship just to keep him important and relevant within the industry to sell tickets. Like it's so meta, but it's also so true, which is also really unfortunate. So when we get the realistic understanding of Beckett just wanting a normal life, wanting to be a young person, and like wanting to kind of just having a struggles like what Finley's having. It's like I would kill to like have regular problems like regular people, but like my problems are affect 40, 50 other people, like a whole production crew. I definitely get that. And that's the struggle of actors, or people who are like big, whose careers, help, fund other people's lives. Um, but it was pretty humbling to see Beckett like also be so nice and open with all the other people that Finley engaged with in the storyline. I was like, no, he's just a good person. take him out of the movies, take him by himself. He's just a good, normal person that, like, people always forget the actor and that they're actually real people at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah, and I mean the tragic side of it is, his love essentially, because the idea is the more successful he is, the more movies get made, then the crew, continues working, yada yada yada. And that's all well and good, but it gets weaponized against him, and
Mhm.
um, it's one of those things that, yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, listen, I think he could still be himself and still accomplish being a great actor and being able to do those things, right? I don't think they have to be one and the same, right? And that's what he kind of rails against, is this fake persona just for the sake of, you know, conflated sales and everything else.
Mhm.
So, and yeah, very much like Finley, in many ways, trying to find he's trying to find himself, in the same way, um, but mainly, whereas hers is a little bit more existential, his is, well, I got to stand up to my dad, you
Yeah.
know, and how the hell do you do that? So,
Yeah. It's just like finding the courage to, um, stand up for yourself, like you said. But I think it's also touching upon that his storyline is so fake and so fabricated that his main struggle and objective was just trying to be real, being authentic and genuine. And that was like nicely mixed in with everything else that was going on in this book. Uh, and it just like at the end of the day, when we like actually individualize all these storylines, like these are just real people just trying to, get along with their day. Trying to move forward in life. Trying to like find their happiness and purpose. And I really enjoyed that. Like we got like a different perspectives. We got an older woman, we got a younger woman, and we got a male. Um, and like not once did they ever like really were fighting with each other for attention. Like they all got their purpose and spotlight and time to really flesh out on their own. And I
absolutely,
enjoy
yeah.
that's good balanced writing.
Yeah.
Um,
And the
so
music teacher, I thought,
yeah, music teacher.
um, she was kind of ended up being somewhat like the voice of reason, let's say. Whenever Finley dealt with all these three cosmos of events happening, it was back
Hmm.
to the writing teacher, and she'd have at least the direction to point Finley in.
Yeah, and I love that. So Sister Maria, in the book, who ended up being like that mentor that, like you said, when she got lost, like let's just go back to the person who knows more than I do. Um, and in the movie, it kind of like Sister Maria kind of got split between like two different type of people, which I'm totally okay with that too, because that direction and wisdom from an older authoritative figure was still very present in her life, and I enjoy that. Um, we could talk a little bit about the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, I suggest definitely go watch it. It's amazing. I've seen it like two, three times now. Very, very solid on its own. Of course, adaptations are always going to have similars and differences. But what I was more surprised with when I read the book, there was more of a whole storyline that was not present in the movie. And that's the story of eating disorders and this anorexia that she kind of starts to develop during her stress of preparing herself for this music audition, because we see like the beginning of her diary journal entries, like this date, this many calories, what she's actually eating, how many pounds she lost. Like she actually has a calculated timeline of like her process of her diet, and the movie did not touch upon that, so that was something surprising to me. What were your thoughts of that, or are you okay with the fact that they omitted that storyline out of the movie?
Yeah, I think it would have just been one too many. And again, it's a lot easier to write journal entries into a book than it is again, you end up kind of with like a voiceover or maybe some sort of clever graphic, but it becomes a little bit convoluted if you don't do it right.
Right.
Um, and I appreciate it because it's certainly real and it shows it, there's the mental struggle of her and God and trying to figure stuff out, and then this becomes the tangible struggle of how it emanates. So I appreciated it. I think I don't know, maybe it just would have been hard to pull off of like, well, how do you show that, with this actress, like, hey, literally starve yourself. All right, now put on 5 pounds, now take away 10 pounds. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I don't know, but I don't mind it. I don't mind it having it in the book, and I don't mind it not being in the movie. So,
Right. I more questioned not the like the that it wasn't irrelevant. I just find it really hard to believe. And I mean this like, hear me out. I definitely have struggled with anorexia and stuff and weight loss and gain. So I definitely understand that. And it's like the grief and loss really affects people's diet. Stress really affects people's diet. I totally understand. I train in Krav Maga. I definitely understand the physical struggles of like keeping yourself healthy, weight, the influctuations of calorie intake and all that. But my question was when it came for a music audition, instrument instrumental is not really as physically strenuous and demanding as it would be, say, if you were in the military or doing like a physical type of audition, whereas musical is more like personal feeling and stuff. Like, I don't think your music ability is really based on your weight. Um, and that's where I was getting confused. I was like, oh, I wonder why this is also a struggle with her, like how they paired weight loss with music type of preparation. So there I was more conflicted with it in
mhm.
that sense. Like the reason why we had that. Not to say it wasn't irrelevant because I definitely understand like when you're going through life and depression, like yeah, it affects you mentally, affects you physically, but also that they did touch upon this is something we see with a lot of young people who do struggle. Um, and I think it's like they brought it up enough. They're like, hey, let's spotlight it. Let's make us aware and not delve too deep into it, but let us know that this can be a problem if you let it persist. This could be a lifelong problem if you don't nip it in the bud now. And I appreciate that they brought that up because it is something that teenagers do struggle with.
I mean, yeah, I mean, in an odd way, like if there is a reason for it, the rest of Finley's world is so out of control in a sense. I mean, not, from an objective standpoint, she has the most tame life one could ever imagine,
Hmm.
but for her internally, it's a chaos vortex. And so, in an odd way, her having control over what she eats and doesn't eat gives her at least something to hang on to. And
Yeah.
and obviously it's a perverse way to have control in your life, but when you're grasping at straws, you'll latch on to anything, unfortunately. So, you know, I can. Again, it's not good, but I can
No.
understand it.
Yeah, definitely the lack of control and life spirals. Um, I definitely understand that. And then so that was something that wasn't in the movie but was more highlighted in the book, which is like and also just the faith and spirituality was more highlighted and more prevalent in the book than it was in the movie as well. And I think that could have been, like you said, maybe one or two too many storylines. And I think,
Yeah, I
yeah,
also think, unfortunately, like, I mean, faith movies do really well in many examples, but I think also too they were trying to go more mainstream with the movie,
yeah,
and I think. as far as the book goes, if you translated that fully into a movie, people would have called it a religious movie and probably turned off some people. So for better or worse, yeah, I'm fine with them taking it out for the movie.
Yeah, same. And like normally, like you said, for ticket sales, because we are in the industry, we know what sells. And I can't really think of a lot of storylines where teenagers and spirituality are really main in the storyline of a movie. I don't see how that works. I can't see Gen Z millennials watching a teenage movie if they know if it's faith based. Unfortunately, and we don't like not to say that there aren't teenagers out there that are faith based, but that doesn't really sell well when it comes to the industry. So it
Yeah.
makes sense that they omitted a lot of the spiritual aspect of this movie, or of that storyline. But what I did enjoy was the music. Oh my God. I love the soundtrack of the movie. And I downloaded when I first watched the movie. I loved the music so much. I downloaded the soundtrack like years ago. Um, that was like a big beneficial thing to me, and to the audience, that we get more in the movie that you can't get in the book. We know the music and her piece was important, for her brother, but to actually get that come to fruition in the movie is like that's why we love movie adaptations too, because that really translated well.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I mean, hell, you could literally write out the song in notes, and I'd still be like, cool, C minor, great, love it. I don't know what that means.
but
You
like
know?
I gotta say, the music in the movie, it slaps, man. It's so good. I love it. Maybe that's just my personal taste in fiddle and Irish music, but like it's catered because like they do fuse a lot of techno into classical type of music. It's a beautiful blend, and you don't get that in the book, but you definitely get it in the movie. So we all benefited from that.
Yeah.
Um, a little anything else about this book before we go a little bit more into the author and other stuff?
No, I mean, again, I think the movie and the book, they both lean into their strengths, right? So, with the movie, you get the visuals and you get the sound, right? With the book, you get much more of the internal. So I think that all works really great. And yeah, I like the aspect of Irish music in a way being sort of like jazz, where it's a lot more lively and, you know, you can add on to it. And I think that's um, helped Finley because she was certainly more rigid of what she thought life was. And if it didn't fit
Mhm.
her preconceived notions, then, there's a push against reality where it's like, just go with it, you know?
Right.
And should we talk about the cross, the infamous cross that she is after? Because that's
Absolutely. Yeah. So we see in the journal that her brother has left behind a drawing of a partially full, like a broken cross and whatnot. And she spends the entire movie just going from place to place, cemetery to cemetery, trying to find this exact cross that led her brother, like that, to, she's trying to find this place and get to that moment. Like, what was so important about this that made him like stop and look at life? And finally, we get this. Beckett is the one who finds the cross, um, and it's actually a quote that was directed from her brother to her. So like even like posthumously, literally from the grave, her brother is still speaking to her and still with her. Um, and I think that was a nice end bow tie to
yeah,
that storyline.
and it worked out well because it was pretty much like finding a needle in a haystack. It was like, hey, here's this cross. It's like, listen, Ireland's got 8,000 of those just in this town.
Right.
So good luck, And so yeah, it's a nice bow on top of not only the brother storyline, but Beckett as well, right? So the melding of all that stuff coming together. So worked out really nice.
Yeah, and like, and I love the fact that like Beckett just like helped her along her journey throughout the entire, like they both helped each other trying to find each other. Hence the there you'll find me. It's like the title really becomes like more obvious when you read the book. You're like, ah, it's a lot about searching for answers, a lot about finding themselves and finding each other, which is like I really loved. I actually really loved.
Yeah.
So a little bit about the author, Jenny B. Jones. I've actually never read any of her books, but now after really thoroughly enjoying this one, I'm like so ready to read her other ones. She was born and raised in Arkansas and grew up loving to read and create stories, much like many of us. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in English and a master's in teaching and a master's of library and information studies. And she served as a library media specialist where there she pushed books like a dealer all day. And then, so, she was always surrounded by stories and books and that way. And she sold her first book in 2005, and it's gone on to write young adult, new adult romances in the YA genre. And she's won a lot of awards, such as the RT Reviewer's Choice Award, and has won 4 Carol Awards. So she's bigger in the YA teen youth demographic, and I really enjoyed it. I was like we were saying, like there was a lot packed into this book, but not once was I ever lost.
Yeah.
And
No,
I think that's a testament to her writing style.
yeah, no, she writes well. And again, there's some books that you read that you're like, this is a great book, totally unfilmable. Whereas you read some books that's like, oh, I can paint this in my mind as a movie right now. And she has that,
Absolutely.
at least with this one, she has that style. So
Yeah. So I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the movie, first of all, because I watched that years ago during the pandemic. And I remember crying my eyes out, like, oh my God, this this movie just like hits so hard emotionally. And then of course, based on the book, I was like, well, I gotta read this. And that was one of the books just always in the back of my mind. I'm like, yeah, eventually I'll read it. And then here we had this book club and gave us the perfect opportunity to finally read it. And I was thoroughly impressed by both the movie and the book. So like kudos. Like I did really, really enjoy this. So book, speaking of books, Phil, what other books have you been reading
well,
on your
well,
own time for fun, what have you?
well, I finished up the Seven Dials Mystery by Agatha Christie. It is not a Hercule Poirot novel, but apparently is the second in kind of like a series. And like Hercule Poirot, they're standalones for the most part. Um, it was much more like a espionage thriller in the end than a true murder mystery. So it was a little bit different. I liked aspects of it. I don't know if I loved it. But so maybe not one of her stronger books, but still enjoyable all the same. And then with all the hubbub of Dune Part Two being the greatest movie ever, according to basically everybody but me, um, I have decided to read the Dune book to see what I'm missing out on, and see.
Wow.
Now, one of the things I did not under I did this book is broken up into books, and I thought, okay, cool. So book two, everyone says is like the big one, the good one. And I thought, oh, okay, so 650 pages, okay, to read 2 books. Cool. Nope, this is like having Lord of the Rings, the full compendium in one thing when it's really 3 books and one, so
I see.
so the 3 books comprise Dune, the first book. Very confusing for me
Wow.
initially.
Good for
Um,
you. That's a serious commitment.
it is, but you know what? I I'm enjoying the book a lot more than the movies already. I'm only like page 100-ish, but so far, yeah, I like his writing style, so I'm having fun with it.
Good for you. Good for you. I love how you brought up Agatha Christie because I'm a big fan of her. This book was actually suggested to me because of algorithms and because Agatha Christie's so often in my feed. The guest list was suggested to me because I liked Agatha Christie. So it is a mystery thriller murder kind of storyline. I was like, that I'm going to delve into this book pretty quickly. But I'm actually currently reading Sure, I'll Join Your Cult by Maria Bamford. She has the Lady Dynamite series that's loosely based on her life on Netflix. And, you know, she's a stand-up comedian, but she's very open about her mental struggles and her mental health. And she sheds light on it a lot. And as someone who struggles with depression and anxiety, like, I don't know, I've laughed so much in this book. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So anyone who just like struggles with life, which is all of us, go read it. It's great. And I'm not even finished yet. So those are the books I've been currently reading. I finished Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk. And then I also finished She Gets the Girl, which was also another teen YA romance story. So I don't know, like the YAs are, I've been reading a lot of YAs lately. I think maybe I'm just like, I just want the feel good. And a lot of YAs are generally feel good. So those are the books as of late that I've read. So speaking of books that we're going to be reading up in the upcoming future, Phil, we have your choice for April.
Yeah, so this is Sherman Alexis, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. The title itself is evocative. So let's see how the book is. I have not yet read a single page, but it comes highly recommended on many book reading lists. So
yeah,
let's
me
see
neither.
what it's all about.
And it's also banned in a lot of places too. You liked your banned books.
Listen, stop banning books, people. How about that?
I know, just like books are there for reading. If you don't want to read it personally, then don't read it. Don't ban it for other people. Don't deprive people of like a great storyline just because it may not speak to you. God, that's a whole nother topic. Yeah, and then for May, for AAPI month, I chose On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. Story about, I haven't read it either, but a Vietnamese man and his relationship with his mother and his story of his life. And I'm excited to read that too. And then in June, we have.
In June, we go treasure hunting with Clive Cussler. That's right. If you know Clive Cussler, he has a series of Dirk Pitt novels. And I mean, God, there's like, I don't know, 40, 50 of them.
So many.
I've read like 10. He's like the author I've read the most for sure. Not that he's like, you know, these are like fun ones you pick up at like an airport and you can read just on the flight. And so I don't know. I'm ready to introduce you to Dirk Pitt adventures. They're fun, they're silly, they're world saving.
Yeah.
So
who doesn't like adventure books? Yeah, so far I don't have a choice for July yet, but knowing me, it'll probably be something summerish, adventure-ish. You know, we'll see what future me picks up for us. But yeah, those are the upcoming books we have. Keep reading, keep watching. You know, like let us know what books that you've read. Let us know what books you want us to read. And Phil, in the meantime, what do you have in your life that people can follow?
just on social media at Phil Svitek, you know, follow along the journey of everything that we do, books, movies, self-help stuff. So all, you know, just anything that's soccer. So if you like any of those things, you know, that's what I post about.
Absolutely. And you have a big project of your own also, so that people should go fund.
The campaign's over, so unfortunately, that's all well and good.
We
But
can
hey, if you
still
want to
support.
listen, DM me, and if you want to Venmo some money to the arbiters, you know, listen, I'm not going to say no.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, you can follow me at Serafini TV, just reading all the books, watching all the movies, working out at all the gyms, you know, just doing my thing. All right. Thanks everyone for reading along with us, talking along with us, and we will see you for our next book.